welcome to this discussion.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I mean, like I said, I've heard so much about you. I'm so to see you here.
Thank you so much. What a flamboyant introduction.
All right, let me quickly introduce Father Benjamin Archie, one of our resource persons today. Father Benjamin Archie is a priest of the Catholic Diocese of Enugu. He is presently the Director of Communications. He studied communications and lectures at Godfrey Okoye University, Ugwuamunike. He's a member of the Diocesan Curia and a fellow of the Institute of Corporate of Administration. He was the secretary of the Third Synod of Enugu Diocesan Synod, and of course, once an editor-in-chief of the Choice Flame newspaper, Catholic Diocese of Enugu. In fact, Father Benjamin actually is actually my boss in the office. I'm so happy to have him here. So, boss, you're welcome to this discussion. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, so I was saying,
boss, you're welcome.
Please. Thank you, Tony. Sorry, I was muted. I didn't know I was muted. Thank you for that introduction and that boss title. Actually got me. Don't worry about that. Well, we are all partners in the business. Thank you.
All right, you are all highly welcome to this interaction. Well, we will be having this interaction probably within the space of an hour, 30 minutes. It consists of two sections. The first section has to do with the interaction among the resource persons. They will talk about the content of the book, the relevance of the book. Then the second segment has to do with an opportunity forum when we invite our online audience to make their contributions, to make their to ask their questions. Of course, they could direct the questions to Father Isimak, who is the author of the book. So it is also good to point out that we are concurrently running on our YouTube channel at the Choice Flame, and also on our Facebook page, Catholic Diocese of Enugu. Therefore, if you want to ask a question or make your contribution, you can go to the comment section on Facebook and ask your questions. You'll be identified. You can also go to our YouTube channel at the chat section. We will also identify you. If you're also joining us here on Zoom, you can raise your hand. We can also identify you and then welcome you into this room. So that's it. You're all welcome. So Father Jude, yesterday I was having a discussion with my friend here, a priest. So he was talking about how beautiful your book is, how you actually critically look at the social, cultural, and religious context of the ebooks and use it as a platform to analyze the connection, the dialogue between faith and culture. Okay, so and it's something so interesting. But then he asked me a very important question: what is actually the passion? What motivated Father Jude to write this book? What is his passion? What motivated him to write this book? So we want you to tell us that, and also within a few minutes, give up a kind of a wrap up of the content of the book. Father Jude, over to you.
Thank you, Father Tony, for your words of introduction. I said it earlier on, I'm so elated. For our online participants and audience, in my own capacity, I also want to welcome you to this forum, this faith discussion. Let me begin by saying that the question of bridging the gap between faith and culture has always existed. What do I mean by that? There has been a kind of, will I call it not conflict, so to say, but a kind of rough edge, so to speak, between the received faith we confess as Christians and the cultural space where we live. This rough edge, this seeming irreconcilable thing has been my passion all through my life, starting from my early part of studies till now. That is why in the course of my studies, I started to really go into this field to investigate and to see, even though most authors, scholars have written on this subject, but I still feel that has not really been addressed, because in life, in experience, we see a whole lot of faith crises coming from this irreconcilable nature. And that is why I said, let me give it a bit of a shot in my work to see what we can do with that. So that is actually my passion. But before going into this discussion, my inspirations and motivations, I also want to talk about two things. We have two elements here: faith and culture. The former is given by God and it is supernatural. The latter is born out of the natural constitution of the human being, because we are started in a cultural space. In other words, you're looking at two things: the supernatural nature or character and the natural character. Funny enough, these two elements inhere in the human person, because the human person is composed of spiritual, supernatural, if you put it that way, and equally natural. So you see the insertion already in the human experience, in the human life, and in the human nature. This is actually why I feel the conflict or the irreconcilable nature needed to be addressed, because the human person cannot contradict. The human person is not a dualism, so to speak. He has two aspects, but they are embedded in one. He is an entity, so to speak. And that is why I'm motivated to write this. That's what inspired me to write this book. And just like the anchor said, Father Anthony said, we look at faith and culture at a very global level. Then that's the first part of the book. The second part of the book will now deal with Igbo faith and cultural experience as illustration to buttress what this could be when we begin to implement it. Having said that, I go deep into the content of the work. It may be necessary to unravel a bit in the understanding of what faith is. Because when we talk about faith, what do we mean actually? Faith is a substance of belief and conviction. If you go to Hebrew chapter 11, verse 1, the author there has already talked about what faith is: the substance of what is hoped for and the vision of what is yet to be seen. So this particular definition of faith in Hebrew 11:1 orients my understanding of faith as substance of belief and conviction. Then as belief, faith refers to the content of what is believed and accepted as God's propositions on how humans should be guided in the path leading to him. In other words, we're talking about a content. Theology calls it depositum fidei, which means a faith that is actually revealed by God and deposited in the hands of the church to take care of. So we're talking about faith as a system of belief, what we are called to believe in. The Latin will call it in theology fides quae creditor, which is literally translated as the faith that is believed. Now, the second aspect of faith is faith as conviction. Here we are looking at faith as a personal commitment of the individual person, the individual believer, to this content of God's proposition. In other words, when the individual makes a response coming from him to the already deposited faith revealed by God, hand over to the church, when I make a commitment at a personal level to this faith, it becomes my own conviction. And when I make my own conviction, I am not just getting convinced. My conviction is connected with my cultural experience. I cannot just be convinced in the air. Remember, the face you receive is not hanging on the air. So when I make a personal commitment of faith, I am considering that in line with my cultural experience. And that is actually why faith is connected to experience, to culture. And I want to quickly explain what I mean by culture. And I want to start by saying what culture is not, because we have a limited understanding of what culture is, and many a time is actually a problem from my own research why this reconciliation has really not worked at the level it should work. What is culture? First of all, culture is not just tradition. Culture is not just people's way of life. Culture is all that sustain the natural existence of a person or a group. Culture is what gives natural identity to the human person. Just like faith gives supernatural identity to the human person, culture does that at the natural level. In other words, all of us human beings, we are existing in a cultural milieu. And this person at the cultural milieu is equally enveloped by his faith in Christ, by his commitment as a Christian. He confesses faith, he lives in a cultural space. Many a time, the principles that operate at the cultural level sometimes may contradict the principles that operate at the level of faith. And that is why we have this. That's the problem statement, as it were. We now begin to say, okay, having seen this as a problem, how do we get to work in order to really get it off? Because once that is there, we can't really make any headway. The content of the book, therefore, explores on how the individual can live authentically his faith in the midst of his cultural environment without giving priority to one. I am talking about this with the presupposition that you cannot say that faith is higher than culture or culture higher than faith. The human being in whom these two inhere in is actually one. So both of them, there must be what we call an interpenetration. Or Latin will call it a perichoresis, whereby these two form a unity and an entity. And that is actually what this book sets out to do. Whether it achieves that individual, then we look at it later for those who have read the book. The book starts by arguing that the book's argument is based on the personality of Christ, who came with the message of faith. Number one.
Everyone is muted, Father.
So that is actually why, this particular culture faith discussion is based on Christ. Christ is the person who came as a message with the message of faith, but then was inserted in the cultural milieu of the Jews. So you see already, so I take my clue from Christology, that when we look at Christ already, we see this interpenetration already in him. Now, so in other words, there is an interaction which is in the person of Christ through whom we have our Christian faith. So if that is so serious that it had to inhere in Christ, it all means that this particular discussion should find its footing in human life, in human experience, in among the Christians who receive Christ in faith. And this brings up the language of enculturation. Meanwhile, if you go to chapter 1 and chapter 2 of the work, you see the personality of Christ in chapter 1 and chapter 2 as the foundation for the discussion. Now, if you go to chapter 3 and 4, you now begin to see the language of enculturation, which has actually been used severally by scholars, theologians, philosophers. Enculturation, some misinterpret enculturation to be the meeting of culture and faith. When culture and faith meet together, that is enculturation. But it is not about the meeting of culture and faith. It is actually the engagement of the Christian faith with the cultural affiliations of the people. Both of them must come into an engagement. There must be a marriage. Without the marriage, we are doing nothing. So it's not a question of both of them coming together. No, it's not about meeting together. It's about engagement. It's about the commitment both of them should have. That is enculturation. And we see that this enculturation, which is an engagement between the principles of faith and the principles of culture, if both of them are not knitted together, then we still be where we are. That is what I try to analyze in the chapter 3 of the work, in order to express the idea that faith needs culture and vice versa. In order for there to be an authentic living of the Christian faith in the concrete life experience of the people. That is chapter 3 and 4. So in other words, chapter 1 to chapter 4 is actually what I may call the content, the global content of global picture of faith and culture. We actually presented at that chapter 1 and chapter 1 to chapter 4. Now, if you go to chapter 5 to 8, the last part of the book, I now raise the Igbo culture to demonstrate how in Igbo culture, where I come from, where most of us come from, how this relationship would be. Many scholars have worked on that. I just took from where they stopped or where I see the discussion on at the research level, and I took it a bit further. And the idea is to say that the interplay of faith and culture should not just end at level of discussion and analysis. It must deal with practical issues, day-to-day affairs of the people. Remember what I said about culture, life praxis. So you're talking about what people do, how they live, how they do whatever they do. Whatever sustains their existence is embedded in culture understanding. So faith is meant to permeate this. And chapter 5 to 8 will now come to discuss what these imply in the human experience. I think with this, I have addressed a bit in summary the content of the book, and also my inspiration and motivation for writing this work. Thank you for the time.
Wow, thank you very much, Father Jude. I mean, for me, if I have not read this book for the first time, for me, there's no need of reading this book again, because just within these few minutes, you're able to capture the whole gamut of the book. And I think I like the analysis you gave about faith, from two perspectives, as a body of belief, as a deposit of faith, and then as a personal commitment to this faith. And then the meeting and that faith gives a supernatural identity to the human person. And then the culture gives a natural identity to the human person. And then these two, the meeting point is not just meeting, but the marriage between faith and culture. Thank you very much, Father Jude, for such a wonderful analysis of what faith is and then what culture is. But then, before I invite contributors, before I invite Dr. Annie to speak to us, let's talk about the Igbo faith and then culture. Father Jude, I want to ask you, you were describing contextual Christology, and you made allusion to a proposition made by this renowned theologian, I think Leonardo Boff. So that proposition is, let me quote him directly. He said, Christianity can exist outside Christian limits, not only where it is explicitly professed and lived in an orthodox manner, but emerges where human beings say yes to goodness, to truth, and to love. So I think he was referring to the fact that a Christian way of life existed among the people in some cultural traditions before their acceptance of Christianity, before Christianity existed among them. So I would want you to comment on this, especially with relation with the sources and models of Igbo Christology. First of all, what is Igbo Christology?
Thank you, Anthony. I'll begin to really address this from understanding what Christianity is all about. I'll still come to Igbo Christology afterwards. Christianity has two senses. In the strict sense, Christianity is a formal religion in which believers confess their faith in Jesus Christ, who came, who preached, and laid down the principles of the Christian existence, and later died and rose from the dead.
Right.
Through his death and resurrection, he sanctified this religion with his blood, making this religion a way to obtaining the salvation of God. That is Christianity at the formal sense, at the strict sense of it. Now, Christianity has also a meaning at the loose sense. When we consider Christianity as a culture of life that promotes love, as you said, justice, mercy, goodness, and truth. Though these values form the core of Christ's teaching and equally build the foundations of Christian preaching, but this does not preclude the fact that there are cultural traditions that project these virtues and values outside of Christianity. That is the point I was making at that section, at that level.
Yeah.
So when we look at it from this perspective, that there are already cultural traditions that project live and let live, justice, that believes you don't kill anybody. These people were not Christians. They believe in the culture that promotes life and not killing people. So we are looking at this culture, and Christianity came to emphasize these values and give them a supernatural orientation, so to speak. So that is actually what we understand at that level. That is why the author I quoted said that Christianity can exist outside of Christian limits. So in other words, that is why the Second Vatican Council said in Lumen Gentium about universal salvation of all believers, that salvation is not just limited to those who are in Christian church, baptized and follow that there are others who through no fault of theirs are not Catholic, they are not Christians, but they believe in the principles of life, love, justice. Why wouldn't they be saved? That is the church speaking to the council of fathers already. So that was actually the insight that informed that discussion. So having said that, I now said it is important, to understand that the culture, Christianity is already a culture, has the culture that promotes these principles. So, in as much as Christianity postulates this culture of life, but common sense and right thinking validates it. So, and common sense is a product of culture. When somebody wants to kill the other person, he knows it's wrong. He doesn't need faith to tell you that is wrong. He knows already. So common sense already at that level informs you this is wrong. What does faith do? Faith tells you if you do this, look at the consequence, and you're already denying God who made life and who made life sacred. So since you are not the author of life, why would you have the right to go and take away life? So you now see that Christianity came with explanation to give this thing a kind of a foundation for action. Having made that point and having made that distinction, we now see that there is something culture offers faith, and there is something faith offers culture. That is why, if you go back to that question, Christianity can exist outside, which means at the cultural level, people are already pushed up to living in a kind of life that already brings this thing to. So that was an example to say that both of them need to marry. On this ground, I consider it worthwhile to buttress this point with examples with Igbo experience today, which I articulated at the sources and the models, associated models of Igbo Christology. And I will explain what Igbo Christology is in just a few minutes. In the first place, Christology is the science that conceives or understands who Christ is, who Jesus Christ is, from the word Christologos, the science of Christ. You have biology, science of life, psychology, science of the mind. So anything that has to do with logos is only a science. So we know that already. So Christology is only for the science, and science explains and understands. So the science that conceives and understands who Christ is and the meaning he and his message convey to human creation and to human life in general. That is Christology. That big word Christology is actually just so simple as that. And now, if you apply it to Igbo Christology, Igbo Christology therefore means or explores, if I put it that way, Igbo Christology should explore the Igbo understanding now of the person of Jesus Christ, his message and his mission, and how these two can transform Igbo experience, which include Igbo cultural life and affiliations. By implication, Igbo Christology tries to x-ray the interplay that should be between Igbo culture, Igbo life, and the experience of the concrete Igbo person, and the faith which this Igbo as a believer lives and confesses. That is Igbo Christology. And this understanding of Igbo cultural life and experience could be sought, my own argument, through the sources and models embedded in Igbo worldview and life. And I have three sources. I have the first source there is Igbo traditional religion. Second one, myths, proverbs, and parables. And the last one is the historical experience of the people. Now, I'll just pinpoint them to see, I'll tell you how that reconciliation will be. You start talking about the practical application of this particular topic to life. How would we reconcile faith and culture? That's where we are now in these models and the sources. Now, the Igbo tradition has the concept of supreme being, Chukwu, and that's why in our names we have Chukwudi, Chukwunazebere. These things, even though Christianity transformed them and actually give them some level of validity, but these things are the concept, from the category of thought of our people. At that time, that's why they give their children these names. Even though you could say that there are names they were answering before the influence of Christianity, but then they have the concept of the supreme being. And that is why, with the influence of Christianity, these things came as names they give their children. So now you see that in the names already, Chinazebere, Chukwu Diebere, they have this concept of supreme being. Now, you go, I just leave it at that. I'm still coming to analyze it further. You come to the myths, proverbs, and parables. And we will have a popular parable or popular proverb in Igbo or idiom, which goes, they say, the argument was that now, if you look at that particular, actually, I took time to reflect on these parables when I was writing, before bringing them in, because I was trying to be theologically correct on what I was writing. I wanted to understand. I look at this particular idiom, which means that in Igbo category, we have the concept that God protects the human being. And what does Christ do? He protects. What is salvation? God's protection of the people, God's providence. So it's already there at the cultural level. That understanding is already there with the Igbo already. You leave it at that. You come to the second experience of the people. People have their experiences. And when they have experience, for example, somebody goes for a travel and come back, hey, Odumije mekwe also. So somebody say Odumije, which means he believes at the back of his head that there is someone who is actually keeping him going, that made it possible for him to really attain to his destination safe and sound? We answer Echetobi Sike. Someone, when I remember, I am confident. These things are embedded in the Igbo category of thought. And they form the historical experience of our people. In other words, the culture is theocentric already at that level, that there is something godly about the culture, something divine about the culture. And that is why the document of Benedict XVI after the synod was on African Munis, was talking about this. African Munis, talking about that there is some cultures that when you study, you understand that there is already some level, the knowledge of God among the people is already embedded in the culture as you see them, as you read them. These things are what form these sources. Let me leave it at that. I go to the models. But then before going to the models, my argument is, if at this level, when we consider the sources as theocentric, as something that has the element of God in them, what is the problem with applying these things, connecting them to the faith experience? Remember, what was the order of the day was the faith prescribes, dictates. The people, regardless of their experience, you are meant to accept this. So the faith was not more of doing. I'm not judging now, but I'm trying to critique and bring up what I have investigated upon. These people, whether at their cultural space, given the cultural space, whether they are able to really implement this in their lives. I'll give you a typical example. You can't expect someone who grew up in a barrack to be as angelic as someone who grew up very close to the seminary. This just in other words, from the cultural space of the people again, you understand that there is something there. The experience of the average person has a lot to do in determining his faith life and level. And that is actually why the cultural space, which in the life crisis should be researched on, to be studied in order to see the applicability and also the reconciliation between this faith and culture. I leave it at that. I go to the models. I placed 5 models in the book. We have Jesus as healer, as king, as victor, as giver of life, and as chief. I'll just take the last one for want of time. Most of the Igbo names begin with chi or end with chi. I said earlier on about Chidimma, Chinazekbere, and all that. Kosi Sochukwu, Kosi Sochi, Golibechi, Ogechi, and on and on. So the concept of chi already is a central Igbo metaphysics that we cannot actually, not actually understand because we know it. And this chi has a lot of explanation. For example, chi connotes the supreme being at a very strict sense. The second sense is also connotes the representative of chi. Someone who represents chi is also someone who represents Chukwu, the supreme being, could be considered as a chi. And also, it's also something that has to do with somebody's fate and destiny. Okwamona Chimsaga, a woman sang that as a song. In other words, that my God, my chi, designed the course of my existence even before I was born. That's really the origin of determinism in Igbo metaphysics. That before you come into the world, everything has been determined, even though the church does not believe in determinism. But then to that extent, to understand already that chi refers to fate and people's destiny. Now, when we consider these, there are also other things that I've said in the book about, but if you consider the central role of chi in the Igbo philosophy, in the Igbo category of thought, and consider the understanding of Christ in Christian theology, you see that you can connect to Christology through the concept of chi at the level of the people. Because at that level, you are talking about the dynamism that fires life that makes me act the way I act. What does Christ do? Christ came into human experience and actually formed the dynamism through which we act. In other words, I am acting because I believe in him. Because just like he said in the gospel of today, at the very end of the gospel, he said, from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So in other words, is a clear thing pointing to the fact that he is trying to influence us by his life. So when we are making allusion to achieve, we're talking about something that gives us positive influence, even though there could be negative things attached to it. But this could be transformed, evaluated, and also, do some check and balance. In summary, the idea behind the blending of these sources and models with Christian faith is for a proper and adequate enculturation that is meant to transform the mentality of the individual believer. So, creating an environment whereby one would confidently say that faith presupposes culture. In other words, faith meets culture. The whole effort is to discourage the idea that Christianity is totally disconnected from culture, and both have nothing to do with each other. Rather, to see that both have a lot in common, because the human person who exists in a cultural space and confesses his faith within it is at the center and he has the need of both. Based on this fact, the reconciliation of both concepts should remain a central focus in Christianity, to finding a middle ground where both can exist. Hence, the question of reconciliation comes. The Igbo faith, how do we do that? I've already outlined that in the models and the sources. It is by this reconciliation that faith, which is confessed by the individual, is concretely translated into life. Now, when we talk about our faith, the faith we are meant to live is meant to transform life and not just something illusory. That's why there is need for integration of faith and culture. And that brings Christianity and cultural beliefs and dialogues into cultural beliefs and practice into dialogue, therefore bridging this gap between them. I take it as that.
Wow, thank you so much, Father Jude Ezimaka, for this wonderful analysis. I think you just did justice to what Justin the Matter said. Justin the Matter said there were Christians before Christianity. There were Christ-like people before Christ came. And you narrowed it down to our Igbo tradition, our Igbo culture. Thank you so much for that. I will quickly go to you, Dr. Emeka Ani, okay? Dr. Emeka Ani have read the book. He is one of the reviewers of the book. So, Dr. Emeka Ani, you have read this book, but you actually know that over the years, there has been many literatures and books on interaction between faith and culture. There are many books on enculturation, so many of them. So, but I want you to tell us, what do you think Father Jude's book is bringing new to this field of enculturation? What do you think are the perceived impact of this book, especially in our contemporary challenges facing Christianity? Okay. And then, of course, we have the ongoing synod on synodality going on. Do you think this book has any serious impact on that ongoing synod? Dr. Emeka, over to you.
Thank you so much, Father Tony. Let me start by congratulating Father Jude Ezimaka for such a beautiful book. I read this book in the German language, and I was thrilled by the simplicity of the language he used. It's not as bombastic as we hear right now, but the book, the language he used in the German interpretation of this book is such that every person could actually read it and understand it. And of course, this is a very contemporary discussion, the faith and the culture, at a point when the Igbo people are actually running into kind of an identity crisis. Where do we stand? Are we going to our culture? Or are we going to the Christian religion? So congratulations to Father Jude. When he told me about this book some time ago, I decided to call my senior brother, Professor C.K. Chwan, and say, who is this guy? And he said, listen, that guy is one of the best in the academic world. So I was thrilled. And I have I have a brother here, Dr. Franklin Ogunweze, who is the director of genocide prevention in the sub-Saharan Africa. He said the Father Jude has all the goods it takes. That's his description of it. So that made me that excited me into reading this book. But I told Father Jude one thing. I said, I am not a theologian, so I'm going to read your book from the perspective of an ordinary Christian. And when you look at the passion he is investing in discussing his conviction about this, you could pick a chunk of what it is really so much all about. Earlier on, he asked me to try a little analogy of what I understand about this book before I go back to your question. To understand the analogy of this book, I want to establish one thing. And I want to hope that sociologists and theologians here are not going to hit on me. I want to establish that, culture is naturally older than religion. That's my personal establishment. And secondly, I want to also establish that the Christian faith is foreign to our Igbo culture. And obviously, the Igbo culture is a lot older. It's a lot older than the Christian faith. But the analogy of this book, I'm taking the space station to make it a little simpler for ordinary Christians for me to understand. If you remember what's called the space station, that is the station up there, about 350 kilometers above Earth, going around the Earth at 20,000 kilometers an hour. So I look at that station and I take a second aspect of it, the astronauts inside it. And of course, the third aspect, which is the space shuttle. Now, the astronauts are living inside that spaceship. And without the spaceship, they will not survive in the space a moment. And the space shuttle supplies the astronauts with their needs, with their daily needs. Now, if you look at it from the utility aspect of it, imagine that the spaceship is the culture of the people, the Igbo culture. And these astronauts are we, Christians, Igbo people. And of course, this shuttle itself is a religion. Typically, religion is part of a culture. Now, for the shuttle to supply the needs of the astronauts on the spaceship, it needs to dock on the spaceship. And for it to dock on the spaceship, it needs some compatible mechanisms that will allow it to dock. And come to look at it on the aspect of the value system. Now you have religion on one side and you have the culture on the other side. For religion to become a part of a people, it should have a compatible where it will dock on the culture of the people. And you come to look at it as the values of those people. And that was exactly what Christ did. And Christ was born in a Jewish environment, in a Jewish culture. He learned the language. The Bible tells us he was everything else like us except unseen. So appreciating the Jewish culture, he even insisted, listen, I have not come to destroy, I have come to fulfill. That means Christ insisted that he's not even coming to destroy the culture. And with that establishment in the Bible, it means there is a compatibility in the culture and the religion of it. There is possibility that a religion can beautifully dock into the culture. But again, he moves down into, I think it is in one of the Gospels, he insists that, yes, there might be some conflicts. And these conflicts are when he was talking of, listen, the Father might struggle against the Son. There might be misunderstandings between the Father and the Son. And he even went as bold as saying, I have come to divide. But what does he mean by that? It simply means that for the religion to be fully part of a culture, there needs to be some structural adjustments, some reflections that will make some corrections. And that was actually the point of disagreement Christ was having with the Pharisees and the Sadducees in their interpretation with the law. So at that point in time, it was very clear that for you to put in some restructuring in the system without adulterating the substance of a culture, there is a possibility. And the church actually accepted this. The church accepted this in the principle of enculturation. Actually, in 1603, the church talked of the principle of subsidiarity. In German, it's a little difficult saying in English, but in German they call it the Subsidiaritätsprinzip here. That means the possibility of the culture being part, the religion being part of the culture of the people. And that is the analogy what Father Jude was trying to explain in his book. Actually, one of the old theologians, French theologians, Pierre Teilhard, a paleontologist, he actually made it very clear that we're talking about the hominization of religion, how to bring religion down. And we as Igbo people, we seem to be lucky because the Christian faith has a lot of values that it shares with the Igbo culture. That means it is so easy for the Christian religion, for the Christian faith, to dock on the Igbo culture because they share a lot of values. Father has already talked about it. Our deity, our compassion, our eternity, our holiness, our truthfulness, our charity, and everything. And of course, he is correct when he says so many people have written about this. Actually, my senior brother has actually written a more brutal book on this issue. He said, "Are you ready to be Christians?" Professor K. Chukwuani wrote it. He said, are we ready to be Christians? And that is a very pointing question. The novelty of what Father Jude wrote in his book is very simple. Despite the fact there are so many books about it, but the point is that nothing is changing. In fact, Christianity is running into some level of crisis. Should we even trust this religion? Are they destroying us? What do we need for it? And this is why you have some movements of people now trying to say, we're going back to the roots. We're all going back to the roots. We don't want this missionary church anymore. But the problem is that the interpretation of going back to the roots, some of these young people, some of these people who agitate for it, they do not actually even know how the religion they want to go back looks like. So eventually, they might end up even developing a pseudo religion, a pseudo religion that has actually no basis and cannot even dock on the culture of our people. So the novelty of this book, I find it very, very interesting because Father Jude is insisting on the practical faith, on the practical reflection of faith in our lives. Have you ever asked yourself, why do we have so many Christian churches in Nigeria? Why do we have a multiplicity of faith in Nigeria? But then the truthfulness and the sincerity of the average person remains in question. They say Nigeria is one of the most criminal countries. So it becomes an irony to say we have so many faiths in the Christian religion, but then we are not behaving well, for instance. That means there's a point that is lacking in the connection. If we actually practice our faith, there will not be so much untruthfulness. There will not be so much insincerity in the system. There will not be so much. We should be able to be trusting each other going about. And that is what is new in what Father Jude is writing about. Get the faith, to practice it. Because in the Holy Book, he says, they are Christ-like. That's the beginning of the idea of Christianity. By their fruits, you should know them. But how can you know a Christian by his fruit if he goes to church in the morning and steals in the evening? because the faith he is actually confessing is not being practiced. And Father Jude is insisting, one way or the other, get the faith, practice the faith, so that those who see you, as is in the Holy Book, they will see the Christ in you. And that is what is lacking. And that's why this book is very, very interesting. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Ane. I think I'm so fascinated about that analogy you gave about the shuttle, the spaceship, and then the astronauts. I mean, it just simplified the whole book. Thank you so much, Dr. Ane, for such a wonderful explanation and analysis. I'm going to you, Father Ben, actually. I think I will have to ask you the same question, but then, Father, Dr. Mekane, I would say, has represented the laity from this from his perspective. I would want a perspective from a clergyman. So, Father Ben, what do you think this book from Father Jude is bringing new to this field of research, to the field of inculturation? What impact does it have to our contemporary crisis of faith in Africa? And of course, you were once the secretary of the Third Enugu Daisam Synod. Do you think this book has something to show for the ongoing synod and synodality?
Well, thank you very much, Father Tony, for this question. I'll add my voice to that of my friend, Dr. Neka, to congratulate Father Jude for the beautiful work he did, which you gave me the opportunity to read at the manuscript level, even before it was published. So thank you for giving me that privilege to have read it, at that point. I appreciate that. Well, just as Dr. Neka said, there are actually very fresh perspectives that Father Jude's work brought to this conversation. Dr. Neka called it a contemporary conversation, a contemporary issue, and he is not wrong in calling it that. But I will also add that this is an issue that has been around for a very long time. So it's not new, it has been there. The conflict between the Christian faith we received and the culture it makes in Africa, just like we have other places, has been an issue in the front burner for a very long time, and that's why what Father Jude did is very, very beautiful and commendable. Adding your voice to that, to the conversation, that ongoing conversation, with the beautiful work you wrote, with that excellent work. There are, in the chapter 3 of the work, Father Jude dealt on enculturation, gave us the background, what it's all about. Of course, in his explanation, he also, went over that again. But there are some things he pointed out in that chapter 3 that I found quite interesting. They may not sound completely new, but the emphasis that the book gave it, I found it interesting. He was given the criteria that promotes the enculturation exercise. Because he explained what enculturation is, that very important attempt to marry faith, the Christian faith we receive, with the culture it has made. So, and he gave some criteria. Like I said, this criteria may not sound really very new as such, but the emphasis the book gave them, and the fact that he highlighted them is something I find quite interesting, and the way it was presented. So he was talking about drawing a distinction between the gospel message and the culture, and it's very, very important. If you don't see that distinction, if one is not actually sure, the difference between the two, you won't even begin to think of marrying them. They are not one and the same. The Christian faith is just on its own, and just like John the 23rd said, Father Jude quoted in that particular page, Christianity doesn't actually belong to any culture. You can't actually even identify with the Western culture. which is one mistake people make most often when they talk about Christianity. It doesn't actually, no culture owns Christianity. It is a faith, it's on its own, you know. So Christian faith incarnated in the Western culture, just as we are trying to have it incarnate also in the have incarnation in the African culture. So it's on its own. It's standing on its own. It's not owned by any culture, so to speak. So being able to make that distinction is something that is very important, so that people don't go on mixing up things, because that's actually the problem we are having. Not being able to know, yes, this is the faith, this is the culture we have, and how do we reconcile this faith with culture? Not jettisoning our culture completely, but finding a way that this faith we have received, which we cherish, can actually find its place, find concrete expression within the context of our culture, without us, dropping our culture, which is another extreme that, sometimes people go to. Christian faith has come, let us go do away with the African culture and tradition completely. That's one extreme. But the other extreme is, okay, Christianity has come, well, let's just forget about Christianity. This is where we have been. These are two extremes. So we try to marry, the two. So it's something that we really need to bear in mind. And this book, Father Jude tried to underscore that, the importance of trying to draw that distinction between the gospel message and our culture. And when we talk about culture, people's perception of the divine is part of their culture. People's perception of the divine, I could see that idea running all through this book of Father Jude. So it's just that way. So we need to be sure, of what each one is before we can think of marrying it. That was the argument of Father Jude there, and I found that argument quite interesting. Now he talked about preservation of the church's identity. I mean, this flows from the first one. I found that also quite interesting, because if we don't identify, preserve the church's identity, know what the church's identity is, and try to preserve it, I mean, the faith we have received might be swallowed up. There are so many things calling our attention, the culture and tradition we've had before the advent of Christianity. For crying out loud, we celebrated the centenary of, the advent of Christianity in 1985. A child born in 1985 should be about 30-something years now, or something. So you see, it hasn't lasted so long here. So we are still being pulled. We are still being drawn to the faith the African traditional religion we've had, our culture, and everything that comes, all the baggages that come with it, that come with it. So that is why having embraced the Christian faith, we have to, preserve the church's identity. To be sure that we are not mixing things up. So identifying these things are very, very important, and it will help us to have a better appreciation of the faith as it's being practiced today. Why I consider, okay, the third one, let me just go to the third one, is unity and pluralism. I may not go into details so that we can have time to talk about other things. And I talked about discernment and investigation, which is the last one. Why I consider these things that he brought to the fore important is that we haven't really done those things well. This criteria that Father Jude outlined in chapter 3 of that book, if you look around in the way we practice the faith in this age and time, we still have issues with each of these criteria he outlined. So it is something that we need to go back to. We need to take a look at those criteria one more time and see how we can brace ourselves, get ready to, face it and do them well. Because without that, our practice of the faith will continue to have issues like it's having now. Like I said, this is an issue that has been there for a very long time. But one would expect that after 130-something years of our practice of the Christian faith, things will get better. But that's not what we're seeing. Things seem to be getting worse even. the more you think that, okay, we are growing mature in the faith, we will now have a better appreciation of what the Christian faith is all about, the more people seem to, be going backwards. So that's a fact that that goes to show that we haven't really appreciated the faith, the way we should. So going back to that criteria is important. So that's one thing I find, very well. Like I said, they may not sound so completely new, but the approach that Father Jude gave it as he made the presentation in that chapter 3 is something I found quite interesting. In fact, I had to read that part over and over again, So it's really interesting. As for whether it holds relevance to our conversation in the present time, why not? Of course it does. And that is why I appreciate this work a whole lot. That is why I highly recommend the work that people go through. It's not a very big work. It's something that somebody can sit down and actually read up in a day or 2 or 3, as the case may be. So it's important that we see the arguments and the ideas that Father Jude prepared in that book. And I assure you, it will help in no small measure in appreciating our faith. Yes, as the synodality is going on, yes, it will help us to have our own contributions to make in the conversation by the time the bishops will be sitting in Rome. Yes, as we're speaking from Africa, each people will be speaking from their own perspective and having conversations about the Christian faith and how, to what extent it has been able to, to incarnate in our culture should be one of the principal things that we should be, sending out there when the bishops will be sitting in Rome to discuss. So I think it holds so much relevance, Anthony.
Well, thank you so much. Of course, I'll call you my boss, Father Benjamin Atse, for such a wonderful analysis of the relevance of the book, Faith and Culture, Reconciling the Christian Belief with Igbo Faith Experience Today, and especially how it can help, how it can give credence to the ongoing synod and synodality. Thank you so much, Father Benjamin Atse. Okay, let me quickly remind our online audience that you can still also order the book Faith and Culture on chat section, the Amazon link. You can click there to get a copy of the book Faith and Culture from wherever you are. If you are in Germany, if you are in the US, if you are in the UK, just click the link and place your order. So that's it. So I want to say that the very first section is over. We are moving into the second section, where we would invite our online audience to make their contributions, to then ask their questions. I hope you're ready. All right.
It has to be. It has to be.
Okay. Okay. I will immediately call on Reverend Professor Ike Chukwani, who is the brother of Dr. Annie, to this platform. Professor, you are highly welcome, and I'm so happy to see you here.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. These are all my great friends. Father Zimako, my great boy, I'm very proud of you for the work we have done.
Thank you so much.
When you called my brother called me, and of course, we know what is happening. There's something my brother said about the discussion that was becoming bombastic. We should not make this discussion so bombastic because the book is not bombastic. From the very simple point of view that this simple word we should not lose sight of. Experience. Experience is not a theory. It is something that touches a person. So it's not even a matter of the deposit of faith. The deposit could be a wonderful thing, but how do you experience that deposit? I think for me, that's the most interesting aspect of this book, talking about faith experience. How do our people even experience this faith? And the normal thing, how can they believe if it is not preached to them? How do they experience your preaching? How do they experience your witnessing, that's another word, do you, what the Germans call Wein predigen, Wasser predigen und Wein trinken? You are preaching and telling people to drink water, but you are all the time drinking wine. These are the conflicts about faith. You are talking about enculturation. This Igbo culture, how do people experience that Igbo culture? These things we're experiencing among our politicians and among the many churches around, are they Igbo culture or are they Christian culture? So when people begin to create cultures out of greed, we think it is religion. It's not religion. People who are greedy can create their own God. And so what this book is calling us to look at is the church is an instrument of faith. Yeah, it's just a community that carries on this faith. So this book is raising the question, what type of experience, faith experience are we giving to our people? How are they really experiencing this faith? That is what really attracted me to this book. And it is something that should engage us. And that was the allusion my brother made to what I wrote earlier. Have we actually decided? You need to decide to do something. You even need to decide to experience something. If I don't want to experience you, and if I say you're a hopeless person, whether you are saying something good or not, you are talking nonsense to me. So how do we get our people to appreciate both the Igbo culture and the Christian culture? The word experience is what we need to look at. What are we experiencing? What are our people experiencing? The priest, how does he experience the seminary training? What does he take away from that seminary training? That's the experience which you carry on and you become an agent of evangelization. So what experience have you made and what experience will people make of you? I want to really congratulate Father Simakov for bringing that word, experience, because it's not a theoretical thing, it's also a matter of perception. That we must have experience of it. We can be talking oration, we can be talking about dogma, we can be talking about anything. Even every day in my chaplaincy, every student is creating his own church and people are going there. And he's preaching to them. At the end, he will collect his money and pay his school fees. He's happy. He has obeyed God. He has preached the word of God in his own understanding. And so thank you for that word experience, which we need to look at. What is the experience our people have of both our culture and our faith? Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Reverend Father Professor A.K. Chukwuana. You know, what our people used to say is, okay, okay? It means that when the elders are on the altar of sacrifice, the spirits will be listening. Of course, Father A.K. Chukwuana is our elder brother in faith, in the priesthood. So we are so happy to share from his word of knowledge and experience on this. Thank you very much, Father Professor A.K. Chukwuana. All right, I will immediately invite Father Fabian. You've been raising your hand for some time now. I'm so happy to see you here. So you are welcome to this live interaction on faith and culture. Father Fabian, you're welcome.
Amen.
Father Fabian, you're welcome.
Thank you. Good. Thank you, Tony.
Thank
you. Were you to introduce me as Faber or what? I am Fabian Anibueze, Enugu Diocese here in Rome. I was exponentially gratified seeing the invitation to participate in this faith talk featuring the presentation of Father Jude's brainchild. I would have to confess that I'm yet to get and to read the book. However, I have also to confess my avid curiosity to flip through it with the hope of nourishing myself from Father Jew's fountain of intellectual vitamins. I could not but, however, on the overall, ponder over the title, even against the popular Igbo peremptory caveat or proviso, ka hapụ ihe edere na moto, banye na moto. But that was, I had only the title. So, but listening to it, actually, I thank Father Drew for the presentation. I thank in a very special way also Father Ike Chukwani's brother, that is Dr. Annie. Dr. Annie is actively engaged in this synodal weg going on. Synodal weg is synod, the German, bishops' synod going on in Germany. I read his inputs, even without his knowing it. He's a brother. So I enjoy reading through what he writes, And you write good German. I love that. Okay. So going through the title, actually, Faith and Culture. That is the main title. Then comes the subtitle. Yeah, I found the order of words more or less intriguing. The sequence, faith and culture, sounds like what we call hysteron poteron. That's heist. That is in a special way. That means a reverse lexical, logical, and even metaphysical order. What do we mean? Like when we talk of something like resurrection and death, that kind of thing. When we talk of waking up and then going to bed. When you talk of like lightning and thunder, or thunder and lightning, it's like, I may have to ask, in fact, it is not only a kind of semantic commutation. No, like the Igbos we say, weraki taokwa, na werokwa taaki, sounds the same. But in this case, applying this principle of hysteron poteron, the goal of this particular concept is to place what is considered more important first. I would have to ask, not a question, anyway, I'm making a contribution. Is it not culture consisting the substratum, that is the context of faith? Is it not faith meeting culture? To sustain the reverse would not expose our common bias as Christians and as priests struggling to adapt our African, Igbo, culture to the faith with overacting, unannounced or unbound surrender, superiority of faith for culture. Suggested as enculturation, Christianization, or Christification of our culture, which is the culture-faith interaction, not to say, like Huntington would say, talking of the clash of civilizations anywhere, would always be crisis-ridden. It is. And Father, Professor Ike Chukwani, a senior brother and our mentor, will confirm this. It is the role of theologians, of church leaders in every culture to moderate this interaction so as to promote peaceful and authentic interaction, thereby lessening, if not eradicating, to use a familiar political jargon in our climate, eradication of poverty, one yes, in the Nigerian sector. Yeah, if not eradicating the only effects of this conflict. Good, of course, and we have talked about this many times in the beautiful city of Köln, has already fired a veritable shot in the right direction. There has been, of course, like it of Professor Ikechukwu Ani. Yeah. Obiori, Nicholas Omenka, our own Jude, of course, Joe Ezechi, Philip Mamalo, Unzova, and so on. I suggest we may have to review the approach to this dialogue of culture and faith, or culture with faith, since there are more Igbos in Enugu or in Igbo land, for instance, than Catholics. I stand to be corrected, or Christian. A better way of evangelizing or Christianizing the locality and its populace would be to reconcile the faith to the culture, or at least with the culture, but not vice versa. Yeah, Dr. Ane already pointed that out, and I was happy when he said that. Some concrete pragmatic suggestions would entail, but not limited to issues like, for instance, tracing the relation between Igbo naming ceremonies. Our people, I'm from Eziago, I'm from Moge, actually, and we call it Ibanono. What is the relationship between Ibanono and baptism? How do we explain and encourage our people to use Igbo names for baptisms, and even discouraging the multiplication of names? If I challenge us to maybe mention the names of our bishop, our beloved bishop, it is simple to say CVC Onaga, for instance, but then when you write it out, it becomes Valentine Onaga, and everyone gets confused. My own name, my classmates answered, Paul Anthony, some other thing, then Wachuku. And why can't we use only one name? Traditional marriage, vis-a-vis matrimony, Father Chubut will go in that direction. Have we ever asked ourselves, why do people attend more? When the Ebanku and the matrimony come on the same, when they come on the same day, people will prefer to come for the Ebanku, the Igbo one, in the evening. In the church, the seats will be vacant. Now, people could also try to place it the other way around, maybe arguing because of the timing. Even if we do the Ibanku, that is the traditional one, or the reception aspect of it, in the morning, and place the church event in the evening, I bet you more people will still come for the Ibanku in the morning. But yes, we have to tell ourselves the truth. How do we reconcile these issues? Ibamou, our people call it Ibamou, the passage rites. How do we reconcile them with the Christian rites of Christian initiation, with the relevant mystagogies attached to it? The cults of saints. How do we reconcile them with the cults of our ancestors, not excluding their litanies of saints? litanies of our ancestors. Yes. It was in this way that the church or the faith traveled from its oriental provenance, Jerusalem, to its institutional citadel, Europe or Rome, adapting her faith to the local zeitgeist. Yeah, baptizing pagan practices and orgies into Christian carnivals and feasts. Yes, it is my opinion, brothers and sisters, that until we are able to effectively interact with our different masquerade ceremonies, my people call it Ibono, some people call it Ajo, and in Sudan people, here we did our seminary, they call it Ibankwa, Odo, and so on. Probably rendering them, yeah, a la mode, that is like the carnivores. Yeah, this is the season of carnival, like the carnival. Until the Ozo in my village, Oge, can still be Ozo and the Christian. The ushers in our churches and cathedrals, until they will learn how to be ministers of hospitality, as some of them prefer to be called now, in traditional Igbo attire, however. When you go to the churches, you see them on ties, coats. How, I mean, these things will not be done for us by the white man. They can still be that, but in a traditional attire. And I tell you, my mother is like 68 years or 70 years old now. And she's a member of the choir in my village, Amansio Dondiagoye. And when there are big occasions, she will be made, all of them will be made to put on black skirts with white shirts, you know, with a hat or beret, you may call it, just to sing and present like the Vatican choir, the Western choir down there in Umoya, in Oye, Eziago. Why can't they also go on the wrapper? Or even if they're rapper, I would suggest the traditional one, like, even if it is Isiago. If Isiago is expensive, people may ask, then they can go in a wrapper produced and that has some Igbo significance and connect with our people's mentality. Yes. And to sum it up, yeah, there will always be more to aspire in our attempts at an effective dialogue between culture and faith. Remember, you could notice I always say culture and faith and not the opposite, because Dr. Ikechukwu rightly said it and actually repeated it. Jude knows that also, that culture predated faith. Faith is just very recent, brothers. Faith is very recent. I was trying to engage myself in one of the researches, yeah, promoted by the Vatican recently. And the guy in charge of it asked me, Fabian, you're coming from Nigeria. Can you source some documents, some transactions he used, some transactions between the official church, yeah, the church here, and then your local church? When was your diocese created? I said, my diocese was created in 1972. He said, oh, you're too young. I said, no, we are not too young. He said, forget that, forget that. Dioceses like Trier, dioceses like Köln, dioceses like, I mean, that have behind them brothers and sisters, I will not forget, to use the phraseology of Tertullian, until when we are able to do these things, a good marriage between faith or between culture and faith, until then, Athens will have nothing to do with Jerusalem. Even, no, they may have something, but they may have just very little to do with Jerusalem. That explains why our people want to go back to Athens our youth, they want to go back to Athens, although they're already in Jerusalem. But until we're able to connect them, then there will be a mutual cooperation between Athens and Jerusalem. And that will be what Jude, by then Jude, Ike Father Professor Ike and others who have already thought in this direction, they could say, Nunc Dimittis. Thank you so much, brothers. I'm so delighted to take part in this particular presentation. Congratulations. The presenters, Dr. Anne, I don't know your first name, but then Dr. Anne, thank you. You are an impressive guy. Well done. Father Achi, oh, you know, you are the able. And Tony, I will have to place a challenge to you. Since you are operating in the media, in the assistant media, you have a lot to do. You're already doing so wonderfully well. But then, these areas that has to do what Jude has theoretically presented, you have to take it further. Yeah. If you need some sponsorship, talk to Dr. Anne in Germany. Yeah. Talk to Dr. Try to, our people are not interested. I bet you not so many people will read Father Jude's book. We don't have that time back home. People are busy. People like what they watch. People like things to be put into the media, visive media, so that they look at it. People would like to quote. Yeah, our culture has grown. It's not the way that people would like to quote. What is his name? Mr. Ibu, than to quote a book written. So I was thinking of one comedian from Imo, from Olu. I don't remember. It's a very funny example. Then the challenge I'll be positing to you is this. You are all doing so well in the written media and everything. Get into the film sector. Our youth, they are into there. They are into it. Let us use every available means to evangelize. And the evangelization, not making it like the faith is coming to convert the culture. Let it be trying to engage, let our culture try to engage the faith. That is the way to go. Thank you so much, everyone. I am so glad, I'm proud to be part of this. Thank you.
Whoa, thank you very much.
Hello, Father Anthony.
All right.
Let me say something to my friend, Father, who just made some beautiful remarks. You just said something why you think it's important that we go beyond our print media apostolate. Well, we're doing that already, and what we're doing now is just part of it. In the past we weren't doing this, if you remember, but with Father Tony coming on board and joining me in the communications apostolate, we felt it's important we do things like this. People are much more interested in what they see. The audiovisual attracts more attention, more listenership than what the things written. The usual saying, if you want to hide something from an African, just put it in a book, put it in the written form, and nobody sees it. So we are trying to explore those other aspects of communication as well. Just like we are discussing now, we just had a documentary. Yes, Father Tony knows we just concluded the documentary. He gave me a copy of it yesterday about all these, people going back to paganism, young people going back to paganism, going back to what they had and jettisoning Christianity and all that. And we interviewed a good number of people and all that to find out what the problem really is. So it's a documentary. While it's a very long one, and I told him we are not going to run it. It's about 2-hour documentary. I told him we are going to share it in fragments so that people don't get bored looking at seeing a documentary for 2 straight hours. So we're going to run it in sessions, and get people to see what the product of our investigation of that matter. Yes. And before I conclude my brief submission now, let me say something about some of the things that Father Fabian talked about, how he thinks we can actually look at our faith, do enculturation better, make our faith incarnate within the context of our culture. We are talking about people living the faith entirely, and it's an issue. But there is another very subtle issue, and that is a situation where people are in the church, but they are not Christians. That is a much more difficult situation with God. So you look at our brand of Christianity in Africa, and you wonder what type of Christianity it is. So is it really Christianity as it's taught to, brought to us? So what you see is, people having a predilection for African traditional religion and still claiming to be Christians. So you find a situation where we have our faith, the Christian faith, African traditional religion, excuse me, wearing the toga of Christian faith. Just come to think of it. Yes, I saw an analysis that somebody made not long ago, and I found it quite interesting. And after looking at those analyses, I said, look, what many people practice here is just African traditional religion, and they call it Christianity. You look at some things and you notice it. In the past, when things, are going wrong, people go to the media to find out what is going on. You will find 21st century self-styled prophets who stay in some obscure corner of the countryside. And our people go to patronize them to find out why that fly that came into their room yesterday came. Sometimes when people things go wrong and we get angry, we call Amadioha, the god of thunder, to come and strike them. We have replaced the Amadioha with Holy Ghost fire. You see, what our faith taught us is that the fire of the Holy Spirit sanctifies, purifies, enlightens us. That is not the fire that people talk about now, and they still call themselves Christians. So, the Holy Ghost fire has replaced the Amadioha of our African traditional religion that will have to come and strike people who have offended us. That, of course, already raises a very big question mark on our appreciation of Christ's teaching about forgiveness. So things are going wrong in the family, for example, then they call the Dibia for kind of ethnic or family cleansing. It is now a pollution owner. And so on and so forth. It goes on and on and on. So you actually find a situation where you see people filling the church. We have about 1.3 billion Catholics in the world today. The majority of these people are in Africa and Latin America. Come to Africa. So these hundreds of millions of people that make pretension to Christianity, are they really Christians? So I think it's when we talk about enculturation, this is also something we need to look at. Yeah, we are talking about people living the faith entirely, yes. But there is also this serious problem of people staying in the church, but they're actually practicing something else in the name of Christianity. So I think it's another aspect we need to look at. And that's why I found the work you did very good. So the conversation has to go on. Thank you very much, Anthony.
Thank you very much, Father Benjamin. I say, of course, you have always been at the forefront in promoting the use of modern communication gadgets in our diocese. Yeah, you've been doing well in that area. Thank you so much for that. And then, Father Fabian, thank you so much for that wonderful articulation of your points. For me, it is so interesting and thought-provoking. But I would ask you one thing, please. I would want you to forward those contributions to me, probably in my email. I would like to forward them to the Diocesan Synodal team to reflect over it in the ongoing synod, please. Okay? I think
we're already nearer the synod. We are nearer to the synod here.
I mean, for our diocesan consumption, I think it will help.
Yes, please, because it has to do with Africa. I mean, it has more to do with us more. Yes.
Yes.
Tony
Yes.
is right. If you can do that, please.
Okay. Well, permit me to read out some comments here before we go on. Sylvia Saha says, "Bravo, Father Izumako." Aloysius Ike say, "Dialogue, Father." Isieke, Father Jude. Ezenena Victoria says, "Well done, Father Jude. You are doing well. You are making us proud." And then your own very sister, Oge Izumako, says, "Very apt interpretations, Father Jude. This is interesting. You have always been proud of your sister, and she has always been proud of you." Okay. Then Rita Chinelo says, "Father Jude, thank you, Father, for all these explanations. I mean, this is so awe-inspiring for me." Well, I would immediately invite Dr. Robert Okongu to this platform to engage us, to make his contributions. Dr. Robert Okongu, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. I feel privileged to be at this Zoom meeting. I congratulate Father Jude for his marvelous work. I could get the summary of the book and import from his own rendition. Father Benjamin has just captured what I wanted to say, but I would still like to shed more light when he said that Holy Ghost fire has replaced Amadioha in our churches. And that is exactly where I want to make my submission. Father Fabian talked about bringing some of the cultural things and values into the church. But I would like to sound a caveat, because I think that our mistake was from that. There is a rising nostalgia among our Christians to go back to their roots. This rising nostalgia is coming from the fact that the work of enculturation was something like copy and paste, filling the blank spaces. There were no in-depth interpretation of some cultural values that are native to our people. People just transferred them into the culture, into the Christian faith. And then we see the whole lot of conflicts that we have today. What I would call is a kind of cultural hermeneutics must be applied when we are talking about enculturation. It is not just only bringing cultural values into the church or into the Christian faith as a form of intermarriage. There must be a dating. These two cultures must date each other, just like a man and a woman date themselves before marriage. During this time of dating, the values will be turned upside down, inside out, to know whether this marriage actually is going to hold or not. And that will be achieved by interpreting the hidden things in these cultures that we want to take into Christianity. Because there are things that are hidden behind these cultural values. If we don't interpret them and study them and find out what they really mean, it will be like Holy Ghost fire and Amadioha. Because what people do now is they call Holy Ghost fire, and they forget to understand what does Amadioha do actually to people. And the saddest part of it is that those who are propagating these Holy Ghost fire things are among our ranks. And so when they do it, the people of God take them as something that is already approved and good. And there are other things. So Father Jude has shed some light and has pushed us towards another direction of trying to understand what enculturation really should be. It is not just marrying culture and Christian faith. I think it will have to go deeper into a cultural hermeneutics so that people will know what we are bringing into our house. Do they really belong to this house? What are the meanings behind them? It is only when we are able to filter the meanings, the hidden meanings inside these cultural values, that we'll be able to give them proper place in the Christian faith. Thank you very much for this opportunity. That was what I just wanted to add to this our discussion.
Wow, I'm so happy to hear from you, Dr. Robert Okongo, because I was about to ask this question, okay? I was about to ask, in spite of the various contributions made by enculturation theology to give the African church an authentic faith expression, one of the challenges we are experiencing is religious syncretism, okay? So I was about to ask, are there things we are not doing well in enculturation? Okay, that was what I wanted to ask. I think you have addressed that, or do you actually want to add more things to that? The view from since the Vatican II, the church has talked about enculturation, but it seems that it has not given an authentic faith expression to the African. So I want to ask, are there things we're not doing well in enculturation? I want to direct this question to Dr. Emekani. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much. Actually, I wanted to answer this question before you asked it.
Okay.
So because we kind of are pointing fingers at the people and the culture. My brother just said it before. You cannot be telling me to drink water and you are drinking wine. At a point in time, after the 100 years in Christianity in Nigeria, we need to evaluate ourselves. Actually, that's what synod means. We need to sit down and evaluate our practice of the faith. And it starts from the top down and from down up. So many people have given the testimony now that people are longing to leave the church and go back to the roots. I can tell you one of the reasons. One of the reasons, the moral church has not satisfied the spiritual and moral expectations of our people. They are looking for it somewhere else. There can't be a vacuum in it. When you look at the structure of the church that is flamboyant and not transparent to the people, and forget about the Ahmadi or Hakim. Why should the church present itself as a place to make money? Why should we have 4 offertory processions in one mass? And then people are beginning to understand that there might be a lot more behind the church than what it is. That's those things they are looking for in the church, the sincerity, the sanity they are looking for in the church. They seem not to be seeing it. The structure of the church is there, but it seems not to be representing the values that the culture, our culture promised us. You know, I tell you what, in every folk, there is always this longing for decency and orderliness. Now, if our holy waters are no more working, then they will look for their charms. That is as simple as that. Okay? And if they look up to somebody and they say, he is a moral instance for me, and I see he is not living up to that, they are gone. So there is time for internal self-criticism within the structure of the church. I wanted to even comment on this, even our educational system. The church used to hold itself at a very high esteem, and that is correct. Somebody just said it now. Yes, we are having a kind of internal German synod. What is the German church doing actually? The German church is counting its eggs now. We are in a terrible crisis because things have gone terribly wrong. And I want to promise you, it's not a good promise. What is happening in the German church today is coming to Africa sooner or later. Because at a point in time, we need to see how decent is the church. Why should the church even now be attached to expressions like the church is corrupt, the church is not decent, the church is not pure, but we wear beautiful white clothes and we walk around. So these are the things, some of the things that are turning the people away, because what they look for in the church, they seem not to be finding it. The church has a challenge to prove to the people that the values they preach are the values that they will live. The values of Christianity, I said it before now, we have so much similarity with the values of the African culture. We don't even need to struggle for that. It doesn't mean that we must not even change Holy Ghost fire with Amadioha. No, absolutely not. After all, we celebrate Sundays. Why do we have Sundays to celebrate? It came from a culture that is not a Christian culture, okay? But Christianity embarked itself inside it. Father Fabian even said, why should we even be having all those double celebrations? The reason is that the church, the structure of the church is one way or the other wanting in the expectations that people stretch out to it. And this is where we need to do some job. I expect the Nigerian, the African church to find a way to sit down and evaluate itself. We have too much scandals in the church in Africa, too much of it. And these things are coming to hurt. At the end of the day, let me tell you, I feel I'm a layman within a group of priests now. But the truth is, at the end of the day, those people you call the lay people, will always tell you, I am matching hononem. Okay? And anytime an ordinary Christian tells you as a priest, I'm my hononem, maybe no. You know what it means? It is a certificate of rejection. You can do whatever you want to do. You can preach whatever you want to preach. It doesn't make any sense to me. This is why people are looking at if the Christianity in the African context had lived up to the expectations, up to the moral expectations of the people. Believe me, people will not be looking for a route they don't even know about. Okay? By the way, what is wrong with me telling my father early in the morning, my father Peter, I consider him to be a saint. I pray to him every single morning. As a saint, when I call St. Michael, I call my father, I call my ancestors. These are true things that can happen, but that's not where the point is. The point at this point is very simple. The church in Nigeria, the church in Africa, the bishops in Africa, they should sit down and get the things right. They should sit down and make sure that the church is a moral authority that lives to the authority it preaches to the people. That is the challenge of the church. Let me not take too much of the time on this.
Right, thank you so much, Dr. Emeka, for such a frank and bold contribution to this question. Father Ben, actually, do you have anything to add to this? Father Benjamin?
Yeah, well, I think Dr. Emeka has actually captured that, quite aptly. Yes. It's not just about what is said. It's not just about expressing, communicating the faith orally. The cliche has it that action speaks louder than words. What the people see, there are people who actually lead the faithful in the faith, and what they see is what will actually water their faith. So, but when, like he rightly pointed out, they are not seeing exactly what they are supposed to see or what they have anticipated, the tendency to lose faith, to pass that boat of no confidence will be there. So I think I agree with him. I agree with him as a matter of fact. If we are talking about, having the faith have its place within the context of our culture, there are people who should be in the vanguard. And these are the leaders of the church, the church's hierarchy, or those who are within whose competence it lies to disseminate the Christian message. So when they're not living up to expectation, just like he said, when the people get the impression that this thing just came away, that we don't really seem to mean what we are saying. It's as clear as that. No matter how anybody argues about it, what Dr. Emeka said is true. You'll find a situation where people, just like I said, pass a vote of no confidence and take a walk. Even though it becomes a leap in the dark, they're not even sure where they're going, but you just notice they are disenchanted and decide to take a walk. So I think it's actually an aspect we need to look at. And we need to look at. There's this very popular quote of Pope Paul VI. I think it was in Evangelii Nuntiandi, where he said that the people of our age and time listen more to witnesses more than to teachers. And if at any time they spend their time to listen to teachers, it is because they are witnesses. So it is something we shouldn't lose sight of. It is something we should always bear in mind. So one way of communicating the faith to people in a diversity of cultures is by, making that faith, what we believe in, shine forth in our faith, the way we conduct ourselves as people of faith, as men and women of faith. That is one way of making the other, that person looking at us to say, yeah, this is what Christian faith should be. This is a Christian. That was what happened at Antioch. These people looked at those men and women and said, they behave like the man from Nazareth. And that's how they got that time. That's how they got that appellation. It was a derisive remark. They weren't even praising them. They were actually, it was supposed to be a derogatory remark. Look at these guys. They don't want to live their life. They are taking a cue. They are imitating the man from Nazareth. But these people's lives were so patterned after that of Christ that people who were looking at them had to say it. So that is what it seems to be missing in our age and time, regrettably. So, Father, Dr. Anil's observation is perfectly correct. I'm afraid he's saying the truth. And if care is not taken, if we continue walking that path, I don't know what becomes of the faith we hold dear in a couple of years to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Father Ben Ate. This goes a long way to point out that the church is the church not just of the priests, but also the laity. Thank you very much, Dr. Emeka, for that wonderful contribution. Father Jude, there are a couple of questions here. I think we should be wrapping up, but there are a couple of questions here. Okay. There is this question coming from Lillian Ezimarco. Probably she is a sister, I don't know.
Yes.
She says, something brought an argument between me and my friend last week about using Igbo names for baptism. Okay, so that people have been encouraged in the past to use saint's name for baptism. And so she asks, if I were to use Igbo name for baptism of my child, what does the church say about it? What is the stand of the church about it in respect to inculturation?
The church has really said a lot on that, and I think it's something the church is already doing now. Back then, when I was at the cathedral in the 2012 to 15, people had already started using Igbo names for baptism at that time. But Igbo names that can actually form the child's life's course.
Okay.
If you want to ask somebody, if you bring up a name like, let me use Ogbuefi. What goes Ogbuefi as a baptismal name, then it's a bit. The person can answer that name maybe as the first name, but using Ogbuefi as a baptismal name, at that time the church said no. But the church supports not just Michael, Jude, Alexander. The church, encouraged equally Chukwudi, Chukwuemeka, all these names that still has a lot of Christian understanding, though was there in the culture, but then that's what we're talking about already, just like Father Fabian said, that it is actually culture and faith, because culture is older than religion, than faith. That is clear. There is no question about it. But then there is, my argument is that the faith that came later, just like I said in chapter 4 of the book, should not come and say that whatever the culture has been doing or whatever the culture holds so high should be abrogated. That was actually that was actually what happened with the culturation earlier on. That what people are doing is wrong. And the Vatican II Council came with Nostra Aetate to correct that impression. So it's there already. So Christian names from the Igbo language, Igbo category of thought is also accepted in the church today. I'm talking with a certainty. Is people use it in parishes, in that, but names that do not project things, values that will form and inform the child when the child grows up. I mentioned the name Obuefi. Obuefi is just something that encourages the child to be really a warrior, and that kind of thing. But then, if you want to form the life of a child from the point of view of Christ, then the Obuefi may not be so strong to form a child. That's actually the idea. That doesn't mean that Obuefi as a cultural name, as a name from Igbo culture, is something wrong. There's something wrong in it. No. Or that you're talking about because the names are not just labels. They are also meant to form. I am Ikechi. That is my first name. Then I am Jude from baptism. So the life of St. Jude should be able to inform and form my thinking and my life. So that's my take on that. I think Ezenenna wants to ask a question or something.
Yes. Yeah, I think we should be wrapping up by now, but let me
just cut in. I will address the questions in the chat at the end. So let's allow people to talk. So when I'm concluding, I will address the questions. I have them here. Address the question and we'll conclude. Let's address those who are already here in the forum and asking questions.
Okay. So let's hear from Ezenenna Victoria. Ezenenna, over to you. I think she's the very first lady we are having here today.
Yeah, I think my sister actually asked, but then probably she's no more around.
Yeah, sure. I saw.
Hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Hello.
You're welcome. Hello, I can hear you. We can hear you very well.
Good evening.
Good evening to you.
I'm speaking from Enugu, Nigeria.
Awesome.
Thank you, Father Jude. Thank you, Father Anthony, and the rest of the hosts. I really appreciate. I just want to make a contribution. How will this culture get down to our local churches? I think that the first thing we'll have to do is that we'll go back to the grassroots. What do I mean? Let me begin with the catechism classes. How many parishes complete their catechism classes? How many priests have interest in the catechism classes? I know that when I was much younger, I attended catechism class for 12 good months. And each of the class, the priests would come around and examine us. But these days, you see some of the catechism children, they know the priest, or because they know the bishop or anybody, that person will be able to receive Holy Communion. And because the person does not know or is not grounded in the Catholic faith, tomorrow there are those who will start saying Holy Ghost fire or want to replace Catholic faith with their Pentecostal faith. So I think that the priest should go back to the grassroots, even with the laity. Some of our Catholics, they don't even know what we do in the church. I think that when the priests these days, during the homilies, they should add these things in their homilies to build our faith, to strengthen our faith, and also see it in their own attitude. Because sometimes it's appalling that when you are in a dilemma, you have difficulties, you meet the priest, and the priest is saying something else. And one day, sorry, let me cite an example.
Hello, Evan, are you still there?
And I gave my reasons.
Hello?
And I looked so stupid to another priest and make inquiry.
You can tell her that we are not hearing her very well, so that the thing is cutting.
Evan, we're not hearing you. Can you hear me? All right, it's like she's off. All right, thank you very much, Evan Nena, for that contribution. Even though you couldn't express your thought fully, but we understand. I think we understand what you're saying. Father Jude, do you have anything to say on that?
I think you may get all the questions. Let me just answer them in one, so that we are watching the time.
Okay. So, well, before you answer the question,
we need to ask the question again because I didn't get it because it was cutting.
Okay.
But then when she comes back, we can actually address that. So we get at the questions, I note them down, then we'll answer them along with those at the chat portal. Then we'll conclude.
Okay. All right. Before you answer the question, let me quickly invite Mrs. Oge Simako. I think she's your sister, Father Jude, to express herself. Mrs. Oge Simako, you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. And I thank you, all the panelists. You guys have been awesome. I've just been quiet listening. It's been a great discussion. Amazing. Dr. Emeka Ani, you bring good insights. Perfect, apt, on point. Father Achi, you guys are great. Father Aneke, you guys are awesome. And my lovely brother, always proud of you. I've read the book, and thank you for reaching out to the world, the community, with your wisdom, with everything that you have, and communicating your faith in this way. I am so proud, and I will support you in any way. So I was listening, and everything that we're talking about right here, the purpose of the book and the discussion that we're having is to make sure that we find a comfort zone between issues relating to faith and culture. And I think that these are the grassroots of bigger discussions on this. And I've read a lot of the chats, the comments on the chats. Everyone has very good, awesome, amazing contributions to this. I agree with people who have said that this has to be taken to a larger, place and forum to be able to make changes. I completely agree with that. But I think that these are the grassroots, and we're in the right direction. This is what needs to be done. One thing leads to the other. We're gonna get there. Our Christian faith would have to be married with culture. And we have to learn how to seamlessly do that. We have to learn how to be able to communicate with people who aren't Christians, who have their traditional practices, and who think they don't have anything to do with Christians. There has to be a marriage there. We have to be able to communicate with them. We cannot be judgmental. And we have to find a comfort zone, a very common ground where everyone is able to profess their faith and communicate, and culture enculturation takes place. And so I think that this is good. I think that we're gonna have more conversations. I think that we're gonna have levels of these conversations. And I think I can vision where this is going to be and where we're gonna go with this and all the fruits that we're gonna reap from this. So everyone, thank you for all that you've been doing. Thank you for your support. I have no questions, but I've listened. I've been jumping in and out. I've been in conferences since morning. I have a 6-hour conference that I've been on, but I took off a few minutes to be on here. So I'm glad that I made it. I will be jumping off, and I wish you all the best, and happy Sunday to you all.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay,
You're welcome.
The sister of Father Jude. I'm so happy to see you here. I mean, she was there at the very first presentation of the book during the Zoom interaction. That should be the last one you did. She was there. I think that was the very first time I saw her. Because I watched that interaction with Father James, and it was very much interesting. I mean, it is rare to see a sister that aligned intellectually with his brother. Okay, so kudos to you. Okay, Michael, you are doing well. I'm so proud of you, and I know that your brother is very much proud of you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye-bye.
For want of time, I think we should be wrapping up, but I think let us receive the last contributor from our online audience. I can see Reverend Father David Okolie. He has been raising his hand. Reverend Father David, you're welcome. Over to you. Hello, Father David, can you hear me? Unmute yourself. You muted yourself, so you can. Okay. Okay, he's off. All right. Father Jude, can you quickly go through the response to some of these questions we have there before we wrap up with our thoughts on this?
Yeah. Do you prefer to be asking the questions and I answer, or we look at the chat? Because there are many of them at the chat.
Just go on with the one you could see.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know, I think from the chat here, there are questions of how to bring this thing down to the common person on the streets. You know, just like Father Ikechukwu said earlier on, we're talking about the spirits. And let's get this right. Let's get it straight and right. When I talk about culture, I said I didn't limit it to tradition and people's way of life. I'm talking about life's praxis. So I'm not more of talking of priority as marriage and engagement. You know, Father Fabian was talking about culture coming first, that faith came later. It is presupposed, we know that. But because it's a theological piece, that's why faith should come first, actually. That is faith and culture. If I'm writing culture and faith, I'm not talking about the place of culture in faith. I'm talking about the place of faith in culture. I'm doing a culture philosophy. But what we are doing is theology. What we are doing is a faith discussion. So in other words, it is actually faith, but there is an element that is very important and central in faith discussion and faith life that must be part of it. That is why there is a priority of presentation of faith and not culture coming first. I just want to clear that clear the ground on that. Okay. Then people are talking about how to bring it down. You know, in the homilies of our priests, you know, our priests, you know, from the time when I was in Nigeria till now, I think our priests have developed this attitude of trying to use examples to explain what they want to communicate when they are preaching and all those things. You know, it's fine, it's fantastic. But then, every homily, I think, in my own conviction, should deal with a principle of faith. Every gospel, the first reading, the second reading, and the gospel, all three of them will bring a theme and a principle. When the priest goes deep into the readings and study it, he will get a principle of faith. For instance, today is about don't criticize people, look inward. That actually filtered into the readings of today. You can bring it up and channel it to be a catechetical instruction, faith discussion, faith development. So it's not more of preaching. Homily is not more of preaching. It's not just preaching, let me put it that way, but preaching and teaching. And teaching is about education in faith. And that is actually what this is meant to actually bring to board. That there is need for education of faith, even in the preaching. Because most of our people don't come to Nkuzi Nkokwe in the parishes because of engagements, meetings, and all that. So that 20 minutes of the homily, the bishop does it well, Bishop Onaga does it well. Bringing in a theme, a faith matter to discuss in the context of preaching. When the priest does that every Sunday, at the end of the day, we have done so much, we have achieved so much. Then the catechists and those who are helping the priest, like here we have the Gemeinde referent and all that. Then those things will just be an addendum to be adding to what we are doing already. So a lot depends on our priests, taking the homily time serious, trying to prepare well, trying to educate, trying to look at, and that's why the priest has office in the week where people come to him and he listens to their experience. The word is experience. Within the week, the priest normally in any good that I know, and many other that even here, they have office hours, and the people come with their experience from their family, from their work. And when they come with those experiences, the priest should be able to place those experiences within the context of the faith life, placing the experiences of the people within the context of the faith life of that person. You see, because this experience represents the cultural space where the individual is existing. He's coming from a culture. So culture is not just about tradition, about where of people. It's about how am I able to connect and disconnect? What is happening to me in life? That's why he runs to the priest. So the priest should be able to connect the experience of this person. It could be problem with neighbors. It could be a problem at work. It could be some psychological disorder. This is the environment. This is his cultural milieu. He's having a problem. So culture should not be limited to just tradition and all those things we name. They are part of it. But if enculturation stops at, just like Fabian Eze said, let the women, the choristers in their village wearing their native attire. It's perfect. It's okay to project Igbo culture and all that. Remember, garments we wear can only go a long way projecting what we are talking about. But our ideology and mentality stay at the center. So I'm talking about, the book is an emphasis on having a mentality shift of the way we see our experience and how we should situate our faith within the context of our experience and vice versa. That is the interpenetration. That is the marriage. For example, I said, if the priest listens to their parishioners within the way they come for office, he, through that experience, through that contact, he already has what these people are fighting for, what these people are actually fighting with in their cultural experiences, in their daily endeavors. The gospel has an answer to that. And that's why chapter 8, the very last chapter that dealt on models, actually got it correct. That particular chapter was trying to bring something. For example, I talk about Jesus as healer, as number one aspect of that. That everybody, okay, look at the Pentecostal churches now in Nigeria and even here. Everybody's clamoring for healing. I need this. Healing is not about healing from disease or something. Healing from setbacks. I'm not progressing. I've been in Germany for 20 years. I've not got a grundstück to build a house. I've not got a land. I want to build. I want to make it. I've stayed here for 20 years and nothing is happening to me. He's having a problem already with his cultural experience, which he's not comfortable about. The work of the priest is to shift that mentality. It is not about you getting your end result. It's about your belief system. So when we push our successes at the end result, this is what I want to achieve, my goal. And you're not dealing with your belief system. What do you believe in? How do you reach that level where you want to go? So it is the work of the priest to draw the attention of the people to the belief system. And belief system goes back to faith conviction. What do you believe in? So you're making a connection already. So you're bringing in the cultural experience of the people to their faith. Because, as I said earlier on, there must be a belief system. And faith is a belief system and not a conviction. Something is there. And something you need to really be convinced of what was placed there before you. When there is a marriage between that faith as belief and faith and conviction, then the conviction aspect brings in your cultural experience. But when somebody begins to have a crisis of faith, it's when somebody's belief system is dissociated from his convictions. That doesn't know what he's convinced about. Then the priest should be able to galvanize. That's the word, to galvanize these two things in the person. And that is why we have faith crisis. That is actually why we have neo-paganism. That is actually the outburst of Pentecostalism in the here and now, in what we're doing today. So, in other words, I want to just let it out there that it is important we know that when we talk about culture, we talk about our entire worldview, our entire life, our entire belief system, whatever we have tenacious, whatever we hold tenaciously to. That forms our mindset. There leads me to a mentality shift of those. And this thing can be informed. Now comes the good news. Informed and built by Jesus. That is actually the point.
All right.
So let me take it at that. And
I
think with this, I have actually addressed some of the questions they asked me, because I brought everything together. Because people are asking about experience. Most of the questions were articulated by Dr. and also Father Benjamin. I don't need to go into those ones, the ones that we are not expressing, but the ones that are expressed here, how do we take it out there? That is really my point. How do you take it out there? The discussion is ongoing, but it's not what about discussing. It's about what am I doing now? Because if you believe I'm doing something, every day I do something, every day I do one thing, before you know it, you get at your goal. So it is actually slow but steady, not just interruption and you begin again after 20 years. It doesn't make sense. The faith we receive is not hanging on the air. It has its feet on the floor. And that is, the floor is the experience. And that experience should actually marry faith. And when that is done, we won't be talking about faith crisis again. We're talking about faith development and growth. That's my take on that, on those questions. Anthony, I'm done.
All right. Thank you very much, Father Jude, for that wonderful analysis. I think we should be rounding up by now because of want of time. I would want to read out some comments here. Father George Ademiki says, a wonderful explanation, Father Jude. Simply super. Keep it up. So, of course, Father George Ademiki.
Yes, I know him.
Before we wrap up, yes. Before we wrap up, I would want to invite finally Reverend Father David Okolie. He's been raising his hand. I think that he should be the last person from our online audience before we wrap up our talks and then conclude. Father David, you're welcome. Father David, can you hear me?
I think his network is having problems. You can go ahead with Dr. Emeka, and I think he has something to say.
Yeah, okay. Dr. Emeka,
when he comes up, then we can go ahead.
Dr. Emeka, we've been talking. What is the way forward for the church when we talk about the interaction between faith and culture? What are your admonition to the church towards this?
Yeah,
Dr. Emeka.
Father Tony, I'm beginning to suspect that you read my mind before I talk. So because I had always opted to talk personally, and then the question you asked me is actually what I wanted to address. So congratulations on that. Like I said, I keep you on my suspicion list. Whatever. The first thing I want to do, of course, finally, is to thank Father Jude Ejimako on behalf of my immigrant Catholics here in Germany. We are about 4 million of us. It's always a very good thing to have somebody to look up to, and these are the fine tinctures of success that gives us the taste of the beauty of what we have as foreigners here in Germany. So thank you, Father, and please accept our congratulations on behalf of the foreign Catholics here in Germany.
Thank you.
Now, Father Tony, what you asked me is very important to me because I wanted to talk about it. It is not going to be a rosy thing. It's going to be, I'm going to sign a serious warning to the African Church. Very serious warning. I sound this warning because I live in Europe now, and where I see all these big churches that were built with a lot of faith, and we are pulling all of them down. A lot of them are going down now. The church in Europe is in a big trouble. And when I look at the reasons why the trouble is there now, I don't really see why it should not get to our point. Some of our bishops whom I'm opportune to talk to when they visit this place, and I always tell them, look at the sign of the time. You must begin to listen to the people of God. The church is not owned by priests. The church is owned by Christ and the people of God. The distance between the laity and the priests and the structural heads in the African church is too wide. It is too wide. You cannot get the culture down if you are talking top up. You need to come down, bring your language down, bring it to what they understand. Somebody already said, when the young man comes to you in the office hours, find out what he wants. It is time for the church to listen to your people. It is time for the church to be transparent now. The days when we assume you are doing it right are over. We now know you are humans. And this is one of the things we are discussing actually in the German church. To get a picture of a priest that is realistic to nature, to know that the priest is a normal human being, okay? So we need to be transparent enough to bring the language down to the people so that we can communicate with people at the same level as members of a church, a pilgrim church, on our way to God. We need to participate the laity in our decision making. The days of when the priest takes the decisions alone are over. The church cannot survive on this over some time. We must find a way of participating the laity. You know, with some of the clerics in Nigeria, they love to say lay people, you know, with the connotation of ordinary people. But that is wrong. You know, Pope Francis said, don't call them lay people with that connotation. They are the house Christians. And you see, I don't want to praise my brother, but my senior brother is here. When I see the way he relates with his parish council, with the people of his chaplaincy, I said, this is the ideal way I want to see a priest communicating with his people. You are not giving instructions top up. You are talking about how to move the people of God to God. Together, we are all on the same move. So this is my warning to the church. We must sit down and count our eggs now. We must evaluate. If we do not evaluate now, and I'm talking to the bishops, I hope some of them will hear this thing now. Listen to the sign of time. Sometime, if you don't listen, you will have those empty big churches built in the villages alone. You must develop a new system of evangelization. An evangelization that comes completely down to the people, that participates the people in the decision process, and then helps them to be realistic Christians that live to the faith. The problem we have in Africa is not a conflict of culture and the Christians. No, on the Christian culture. It is the conflict between living the faith and professing the faith. And we need to sit down and discuss it. It is time to have a synod, an African synod, by the way, when the people of God will sit down with their bishops and tell them exactly what they want to tell them. I am sure the laity in Nigeria have a lot of things to tell the clerics. So that's where I will end it for now. And I want to thank you, everybody. I want to thank you, Father Jude. You are living 200 kilometers away from me. So find time to come around. Let's have another breakfast anytime. Okay?
Oh, well, thank you so much, Dr. Emeka, and it's so good to hear from you, and it's so good to hear that your wonderful admonition to the church and also to the laity and then the clergy of the church. It makes so much sense to us. So good to have you, Dr. Emeka. I think the focus on this of the synod on synodality is the church that listens. I hope that the church has listened to what you have said. All right, Father Benati, any final words?
Well, just a few words. First of all, I have to thank, Dr. Emeka for the beautiful submission he just made. I think there's just very little to add to what you said, Dr. Emeka. And of course, Father Judah, thank you so very much. You brought us to this. So I can't thank God enough for the gifts of you and your intellect. Well, the only thing I will add to what Dr. Jude Dr. Emeka said is, you see, a lot depends on the catechesis. We are talking about faith and how we can marry it, reconcile it with our culture. Like I said, in my earlier submissions, it is something that has been there for a very long time. And this thing has perdured after 137 years of our practice of the Christian faith because we are not getting it right. Mm-hmm. So a lot depends on catechesis. Like Dr. Emeka said, yes, the priest has to evangelize, has to, make the people appreciate the faith with the way he lives the faith himself, the clergy in general. But also catechesis is also very important. Getting the people to know that there is actually this distinction between the faith we receive, the Christian faith, and the culture, and that the two can actually coexist. And this is the way we can marry them, and not just bringing things, doing the cut and paste that Father Robert Okobu talked about, because that's the problem we are actually having. So I think the priests need to get enlightened first of all, because the saying, you can't give what you don't have. So you need to first of all agree, and that's why I keep recommending this book to priests. The beautiful work that Father Jude has done, and some other similar works, so that they get to know, appreciate this thing in the first place, understand what it is all about, get enlightened. If you have this knowledge, you'll be able to communicate to the people of God. Of course, matching your walking the talk, matching your words also with action. And I believe we will have something different. So that's all I have to say. Thank you once again, Father Tony and Father Jude.
Wow. Thank you so much. Of course, you are my boss always. Okay. Thank you so much for that wonderful wrapping up. So, Father Jude, over to you.
I suppose this should be the last comment before, because people are getting tired of one or two are actually, this has taken more than 2 hours. It's okay. Just my last word on this is, I just made a contribution to an ongoing discussion in the church today, in society today. I believe that the impact it should have on the people is not just at the level, not just limited to allowing people just that way. We are talking about dancing and clapping in the church, in culturation, trying to celebrate mass in vernacular, trying to put Igbo language and Igbo things, and those things, in as much as they are good in themselves, but they cannot make much impact in the present crisis we are in. The whole crisis has gone to the level that is so complicated. It is a mentality thing. It's no more a wearing clothes or dancing or something. It has graduated from that level to another level. So that is why I said we are looking at culture as everything that connects the individual to the experience. And that experience should receive some level of answer from the faith he professes or she professes. That is always my position. And if the faith someone professes is not able to give answers to all these, then I think that the church and the preaching which Christ came to deliver up to the point of giving his life, you know what it means for somebody to preach and also donate himself? It means that he's very serious. So and he said it is consummated, it is finished, which means whatever thing that could be a problem you have or a challenge is consummated in me. You need a mentality shift to appreciate it. And that's why we celebrate Mass. Remember, it's a holy Mass that is actually a recapture of the event of Calvary and the resurrection, which means that alone can transform lives. And when the priest comes to begin to explain, calling people to faith in that manner, they need to go another length. And when the priest, from the catechism he gives and also his teaching, tell people the value of the Holy Communion, the value of trust. People come to Holy Communion and they are just, okay, I just need to come in and go. People understand the sacredness of the Holy Communion and what it could do in somebody's life. Believe you me, that person will not end the Mass and go to a Pentecostal church and begin to clap hands, because he feels that is not enough for him. Yeah. That has not answered his problem. That has not answered certain things that are coming up from him. So we need to really make this church to explain that it is as serious and as comprehensive as it is. Because that's actually the challenge. And people see the church as unattractive, meaningless and irrelevant to their concrete experience. Remember, this faith is the faith that just communicated and people left their livelihood and followed him. Compare Matthew chapter 4, Matthew chapter 5. When Jesus called the 12 apostles and the disciples, they left their livelihood. Somebody said, come and follow me. He left the wife, the children, the family, and followed him till he died. He never went back again. He never went back again to his family and the wife. He stayed there till he died. And all of them, except John, was crucified, was killed. You can imagine the intensity. You can imagine the influence, the impact this Jesus must have had on these people. The church today should be able to communicate such seriousness in their preaching, in the reception of the sacraments, and whatever we do. It's as serious as that. You can imagine what happened in John chapter 3 when Peter and John told the man at Beautiful Gate, silver and gold we have none, but what we have is Jesus. In his name we command you to walk. So this is a gift. Christ is a gift. And that gift should permeate our cultural lives and experience. That is my passion. That is my inspiration. That is my position ever. And I believe not until we do that, nothing will change. This faith is the faith that actually got 3,000 people changed in a day, just like from Peter's preaching on Pentecost Day. Just a preaching, 3,000 got converted from all parts of the world. You read it in Acts of Paul chapter 2. This same faith is what we celebrate and celebrate in the Holy Mass. This is what we celebrate as a church. Why is that not happening today? So we need to really understand that a lot depends, not just on the hierarchy of the church, on everybody, lay people, what I'll call the people of God, because they include the priests and the religious and also those who are not ordained or professed. All hands on deck. Let's get it right this time. There is need for us to give space for faith in our cultural experiences. There's also need for us to give space in our cultural experiences for faith to dwell. This interpenetration is what will bring transmission in the church and also the world at large. Thank you, everyone. And I want to say that those who are here, I don't need to mention your names, like Father Ojeme, Father Robert Okongwu, Emeka Okechukwu, Father Francis Ozochi, and Father George Adimike, whom I met last time, 2008, when he gave the valedictory speech at Biga, where he made first class in theology, and I was there at the level of philosophy then. I'm happy that he's here, and probably he received this information from the platform where he is. I'm very happy and that you are here. Father George Adimike, I congratulate you. I read all the things you've written here, and I'm so impressed. And I have here a lot of people that have already written a lot of things. And then Father George from my place, and all of you, Ifeoma Niako, and of course, Father Gechukwu has spoken and all that. Mrs. Joy Yeku and the husband, Kosi Sochukwu, Lillian Ezimako, my sister, I thank you. And Obi Ekezie, and all of you, you are so wonderful. Stanley, Nonso Razulike, Sister Agnes, and Ozo Okoye, and Father William Eze. And all of you guys, I thank you so much for making out your time, more than 3 hours, get to 3 hours now you are here. And it can be a bit boring, but you are here, especially listening to your faith. May God, whom you serve, may God, whom you testify to by making out this time, lead you on in the Lenten season we're about to enter on Wednesday, and open up your heart to really looking for meaning, relevance in the faith you profess. And when you take a bit of time in these 40 days to do that, you will see a whole lot at the end of it. I wish you a wonderful time in the Lenten season and all the days of your life. God bless you.
Thank you.
Well, I think we have to give Father Ezimako a round of applause.
Thank you very much.
Raju, thank you so much for hosting us here. I'm so proud of you, seriously. It's been a very interesting conversation over 2 hours, okay? I'm so left for me, I wouldn't want this discussion to end, but then whatever have a beginning must surely have an end, okay? So thank you so much, Dr. Emeka Ani. Thank you so much, Father Benjamin Ati, my boss. And thank you, Jude, Father Jude Ezimako. Of course, you know, you are my special friend. Of course, you know that, okay? And I admire you in a lot of things. It's okay. Now,
we can actually add that those who want to order the book and they are residing in Nigeria can order through the Choice Flame and they connect to me. Because we send 100 copies to Nigeria, but those copies, we have sold them. So we don't have any copy now. And it's only available at Amazon. That is, which is available for those in Nigeria can also order, but it will be a bit difficult for them to get that. So those who want the book can order through the Choice Flame, and they connect to Choice Flame connects to me, and we make them available. You know, so that's what I want just to present, because the chat here didn't say much on those in Nigeria how to get it. So I just want to add that. Yeah.
In Nigeria, yeah. Okay, of course, the Choice Flame is the newspaper belongs to the Catholic Diocese of Enugu. We are here at Holy Ghost Cathedral. So if you want to order the book from Nigeria, you can always come to Holy Ghost Cathedral to do that, okay? Thank you very much. I think we are going to close now, and I plead with Dr. Emeka Ani to lead us in the closing prayer, and then I will invite the fathers, Father Jude and Father Ben, to bless us. I think I have the gift of telepathy. Dr. Emeka.
We are a church. We are a church. It's not about rank. All of us
Sister Agnes is there. She should pray.
Please do.
Sister Agnes, please. I delegate to you. You're my daughter. You can pray. It seems she's not there. Okay.
I don't think she's there.
I think she's gone. Okay, let me try. Father, we thank you for a wonderful session. We thank you for the gift of brotherhood and sister. We thank you for our faith. And we thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ, whom you offered for us. Father, we are on the way to you. The way is rugged. Sometimes we are out of the way. Sometimes we just guess. In our frailty, Father, we offer to you your church. We offer to you your people. We offer to you our faith. as we say it in the Mass, do not look at us, but look at the faith of your church. We offer to you the troubled Africa, the people of Africa in their sufferings. Chineke onye agụrụ na-agụ adịghị nwụkọ. Nyelụ ndị be anyị aka. Nsogbu niile anyị na-enwe na be anyị kịta gbatala anyị n'ọsọ. Anyị amarozi ebe anyị na-eje. Menụ ka okpukpe niile anyị kwere na gị ka ndị mmadụ bịa mụta ya. Anyị mụrụ ya amụ, ọ dị anyị n'ọbara maka na anyị kwere na gị. Biko nyere Afrịka aka, nyere anyị aka. Mgbe niile anyị ga-eji gbagide ọsọ a wee rue n'isi njedebe, mekwa ebe niile, ihe niile, n'ụdị niile anyị si wee chee na anyị ga-esi wee fụrụ. Mekwa aka ije anyị kwụsị n'ebe ị nọ. Ihe niile a anyị na-ayọ. Ma nke anyị chetara, nke anyị kwunwuru, ka anyị na-ekwu nrọ, anyị na-ayọ site na Kristi dị nwe n'anyị. Amen. So,
Amen.
Father, unu gozibezikwa ka ọ nwee dị nsọ.
Father Jude.
The Lord be with you.
And with your
And with your
spirit.
spirit.
May Almighty God bless you and keep you, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Peace be with you.
And with your
And
spirit.
with your spirit.
Father Tony, Father Tony,
All right.
isikwa na mkpe ekpere ụbọchị ọzọ na na-ekwu.
Mana ikpe na ọfụmanụ.
Mana ikpe na ọfụmanụ.
Ikpe na ọfụma.
Yeah, ikpe na ọfụma.
Ngwa ka Chukwu ụlọ.
Thank you.
Good night.
All the best.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. All right.
Good night.